Tandem Nomads, episode 184.
Okay? And because you're letting them know again that my goal is to focus on you. It's not to sell you my product or service. That will come in time if it's supposed to. And it doesn't have to take a long time. Sometimes relationships develop very quickly. Other times it takes a while. Sometimes the timing isn't right. Sometimes it is. This person may never be a prospect for you, but they may appreciate so much your giving spirit that if they know someone who needs what you don't know.
Hello, Nomad Nation. Welcome to Tandem Nomads, the podcast show and entrepreneurship platform where you can find great inspiration and tips to grow a successful portable business and thrive in your global nomadic life. My name is Amel Deregi. I'm a business and marketing coach and the founder of Tandem Nomads. I am very excited to bring to you today a very, very exceptional guest, the author of the book, The Go-Giver. This book has played a huge role in my journey, and I wanted to bring the author, Bob Burg, to you so that hopefully it also helps you and inspires you in your journey. It is a real privilege to have him on the show and interview him. I will be introducing him to you in a few more words, but I just wanted to remind you, if you've been listening to this podcast show for a long time, you might know how much I've been insisting over time on the importance of building meaningful relationships in your business, but also in your day-to-day life, because if you are really caring and really focused on giving value, it will always come back to you. There is, in fact, no marketing strategy that will ever be as effective as truly caring. So with no further ado, I'm really excited to introduce you to Bob Burg. Bob, are you ready for this ride?
Oh, I am absolutely ready, ML.
Thank you so much. It's such a great honor to have you here, Bob. And Nomad Nation, let me just tell you a few words about who is Bob Burg in case you have never heard of him, of which I would be surprised, but here is it. Bob is the author of a number of books on sales, marketing, and influence, with total book sales of well over 1 million copies. He is also a much sought after speaker at Sales and Leadership Conference. His book, The Go-Giver, co-authors with John David Mann, itself has sold over 950,000 copies and has been translated into 28 languages. That's amazing. So through his work and passion, he shows how companies, both large and small, that conduct their businesses the Go-Giver way are now only of much greater value to their customers. They are also significantly more functional and profitable as well. So, Bob, this is just a few words about who you are. And we're going to deep dive into this amazing book that's called The Go-Giver. And the reason I was very excited to have you here, I have to tell you that along my journey, I do believe in everything you teach. But I have to say that sometimes it gets hard. It gets hard to keep with that principle that giving is important. And I have to admit that there were a few moments when it was getting hard. Every time, for some reason, a video or an article from you will pop up and get me back into it. So I just wanted to start by thanking you for being an inspiration on my journey.
Thank you. Well, that means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And so you're all about giving. And there's one thing that, before we go into the topic of how giving can really help grow a business, we have another passion together, which is entrepreneurship. And those who listen to the show know that for me, entrepreneurship is not just about doing business. It's a way of life. It's a philosophy. I'd love to hear about what is for you the entrepreneurial spirit, and why is it so important, as you also say, even if we don't run a business.
Well, the entrepreneurial spirit itself is all about creation. It's creating value for the marketplace, creating value for other individuals. It's finding a need, a want, a desire in the marketplace, maybe one that the marketplace knows is there, and other people, entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs, created that want, need, or desire. And once people understood the benefits, he created a whole new universe, in a sense, of it. So there's nothing an entrepreneur really can't do or really can't accomplish. And the entrepreneur typically does that really out of a desire to serve and also to fulfill their own needs of that creative process. And of course, when you do this correctly, you're also, as a result, going to earn a lot of money and be able to live a lifestyle that you want to live. Now, in terms of when you're not actually owning your own business, and you're working, let's say, within another company or another organization, you still need to act as an entrepreneur, because you're always having to provide value to others. So instead of being an entrepreneur, though, maybe you're an intrapreneur, an entrepreneur within another's organization. But it's still, you still have clients, only that client is maybe your supervisor or your coworkers, the owner of the company, and maybe and indirectly or directly the end user, depending upon what you do. But it's still a matter of finding a way to bring forth value to those around you.
Yes, and bringing value, making an impact. And I know that my listeners that are called Nomad Nation is all about that. I know my community is all about making an impact. And this is why I think entrepreneurship can be very helpful. But the common thing as well with your definition of entrepreneurship and the go-giver is the word value, giving and serving people. So before we go into how can we give meaningfully, but also in a way that it helps grows a business in a meaningful way, could you set the premise of the go-giver?
Sure. The premise itself is simply that shifting your focus, and this is really where it begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others. Understanding that doing this is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, it's actually the most financially profitable way as well. Not for some woo-woo, way out there, magical, mystical reasons. No, not at all. It actually makes very logical, rational sense. When you're that person who moves your focus off of yourself and places it on serving others, bringing value to them, making their lives better, helping solve their problems, helping them get closer to happiness, however they see happiness, through your products, services, and whatever else you bring to the table, people feel good about you. People begin to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to buy from you. They want to refer you to others. So it actually ends up working for everyone involved.
Yes, definitely. And you the one thing that we're going to have to discuss here that I think is that fine balance between giving and expecting something in return. And I think that's the key balance that we need to find, because we're talking about how giving can help grow a business, but there's a lot of people who do give hoping and constantly thinking about how can it bring back to the business. So how do you guide people in making that balance?
Well, it's a great question, and so let's look at it on a couple of levels. First, when we give value to the marketplace, okay, and we do this constantly and consistently, assuming we're giving value in a way, and let's define value. Value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, or information, or help, or whatever, that this other person sees to be of such value or worth or value in their lives that they want to be involved with it and pay for it and whatever it happens to be so when you're providing value to someone, and communicating that value in a way that this person understands it to be of value, they're going to do business with you and money will be exchanged. That's just, again, that's business. That's how it works. So we will, when we do this, if we're giving the right way, we are going to receive. But so then we can say, well, but isn't it healthier to give without expectation? And I would say this. I know what people mean by that. I think I think what it is, I think even a better word than expectation, giving without expectation, is to give without attachment to the result.
I love
Because
this.
I want people to have positive expectation. But obviously, that's not to say, well, you have to get something back or you're not going to give. And no, that's not what we're talking about at all. You give, and you give value to the marketplace because that's who you are, and it's what you do. But when you give constantly and consistently, and again, in a way that the other person understands it to be of value, because value is always in the eyes of the beholder. Okay.
That's so
When
true.
you do this constantly and consistently, you create what my co-author John David Mann and I call the benevolent context for success.
There is so much gold insights here that I would invite you, Nomad Nation, to listen to again. But I love that key sentence that you said is without attachment.
Attachment.
And I think that's something that can really ruin the dynamic of a relationship is when we give and then give the feeling to the other person, okay, I'm giving to you, but our subconscious behavior or body language is so showing in a way,
Oh,
you
absolutely.
owe me.
Yes, exactly. And then, as Pindar in the book says, you're then a creditor, right? You're not,
Mm.
and that's a whole different dynamic in a relationship. Um, so yeah, but when you do the right things in the right way consistently, so you can never control the results. You can control the actions you take and the way you go about those actions. Those you can control. Those are within your control. You cannot control the result. And that's why it's best to not have attachment, because attachment by its very nature causes unhappiness. Attachment by definition really says that if I don't get this result, I'm not happy. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what I believe you're all about, Bob. If we follow you and your messaging, I've been watching your great videos as well, your
Thank you.
podcast. I think everything tell me if I'm wrong, but everything you're about is about becoming a go-giver as a way of living and a way to be happy for ourselves and not just to grow our businesses. We'll be much happier if we actually get that detachment of always getting things back and getting results out of what we do. And also believing, I think that this is a philosophy of life, that in life, the universe, if we call it the universe, or each can call it differently, that if we give, the universe will give it back to you no matter what, as long as you don't do it with the purpose of getting back.
Yeah, and first of all, I love everything you said. I always make sure though that people understand that we're not talking about magic or myth.
Mm-hmm.
For example, well, if I do a good deed like help an old lady across the street, does that mean that I will get business? No, probably not. It probably has nothing to do with anything like that. That's magical thinking. If I just do good things, no. Where it's a good thing to do just because it's a good thing to do. By all
Love
means.
it.
But that's not, you don't do it because you're going to get business from it. That's magic. That's magical thinking. No, that as you give intelligently, by again, what is sales when you think about it? By definition, selling is discovering what the other person needs, wants, or desires and helping them to get it.
I love that. And it's so great that you just said it's not magic and it has to be about understanding the client's perspective. If we
Their,
want to help
their
them,
perspective, exactly.
exactly. And this is, I teach that to my clients and through the podcast, the importance of whenever we sell, not sell what we think they need, but rather listening first
And
to what are
discover.
the needs.
Exactly.
If
Exactly.
Actually, I have a question for you. I live in New York and I have a lot of questions, obviously. This is the whole point of the podcast. But I live in New York and I just moved to America in New York like 5 years ago. And one of the first thing that I noticed, the spirit of New York is all about networking. It's all about intense networking. And one of the questions that everybody asks is, how can I help you? And to be honest with you, it doesn't make me very comfortable when people ask me that, because it just for me goes straight to let's do business instead
Yeah.
of getting to know me and vice versa. I don't know. What is your intake on that? How do you feel about that
Yeah,
question? How
well,
can I help you?
it sounds as though it comes across to you as being contrived, which it often is. And so, if they're, there's two ways to say, can I help you? And one is that you're, looking for that person's business, and it comes across that way. Now, somebody might also say, how can I help you, when they first meet you, and they may even mean it in a good way, and yet it doesn't come across that way because it's a little too early to feel as though there is way. So, my feeling is, when we talk about networking, and that's one of those words that has so many different definitions depending upon who you're asking and how you see people do it. My definition of networking is simply the cultivating of mutually beneficial give and take, or give and receive, win-win relationships. But the focus, the key again, is the giving. And that means that you don't just meet someone and give them your elevator speech and your throw a business card in their face. No, instead, just kind of focus on them and create a relationship with them. It's asking them how they got started in their business, and then listening, because people love answering that question. How did you get started as a whatever it is they do? And they love that question because it's, you're asking them to share their story with you. And very few people get asked to share their story. So right away, you distinguish yourself from everyone else. You want to know about them. You're truly, genuinely, authentically interested in them. And after they tell you what they do, you might ask, what do you enjoy most about it? And it might come across more as, I'll bet you've had some amazing experiences over the years. What do you enjoy most about what you do? And again, it's just a question that they enjoy answering, and it makes them feel comfortable, and a rapport is established. Now, I might ask when the conversation ends and we have exchanged information, if that's appropriate, and I might ask a question. I call this the one key question that will separate you from everyone else. And it simply says, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good potential client for you?
Oh, good question.
Okay? And because you're letting them know, again, that my goal is to focus on you. It's not to sell you my product or service. That will come in time if it's supposed to. And it doesn't have to take a long time. Sometimes relationships develop very quickly. Other times it takes a while. Sometimes the timing isn't right. Sometimes it is. This person may never be a prospect for you, but they may appreciate so much your giving spirit that if they know someone who needs what you don't know. Okay. But another great way, by the way, to set up that question is to say, Mary, I always love connecting good people with other good people. How can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good potential client for you? And Mary is just amazed by that question because she's never been asked that before. And, and she's going to have a way. Now she knows that you're looking for her, out for her best interest.
Nomad Nation, I hope you're taking notes here. These are excellent questions and conversation starters, and also ways to know how to be at service to other people. So that's amazing, Bob. I want to back up a little bit because you mentioned story a few times, and I know the power of your book that I highly recommend to your Nomad Nation. You need to read this book. It's just so inspirational, and I read it, I think, 3 times. So it's just that when things get a little more difficult, it's nice to go back to an inspirational story. Can you tell us a little bit about your characters and why you chose actually a parable to talk about Go Giver?
Well, the reason we chose a parable format is just because a parable is a story, and stories tend to connect. They connect. All my other books had been how-to books. Step 1, step 2, step 3, which I enjoy. That's kind of more my style in terms of teaching. My first book was Endless Referrals, the subtitle Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. And it was a step-by-step system. What is a system? It's the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles, right? The key being predictability. If it's been discovered that by doing A, you'll get the desired results of B, then you know that all you need to do is A and keep doing A and keep doing A, you'll get the desired results of B. And that's fine. But I'd always read a lot of parables throughout the years and had always enjoyed them. And I remember thinking, wouldn't it be great to take the basic premise of Endless Referrals, which was that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust, and turn it into a parable. And so I asked John David Mann, who at the time was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I used to write articles for, and he was brilliant, and very few people at the time knew him. Now, this guy's the co-author and ghostwriter for numerous best-selling books, but back then, few people knew of John. Fortunately, I did. And so I asked John to be the lead writer and the storyteller. And fortunately, he said yes to that, and we collaborated on it. And that's really how the book, came to be.
That's amazing. And
Yeah,
I love those two characters, Joe and Pindar. Can you tell us about them?
sure. Well, Joe is everyone. Joe, everyone's been Joe or Josephine at some time in our lives, right? The person who was young, ambitious, aggressive, was really out there looking to hit it big and did right, but was frustrated because they or we didn't know what we didn't know, and our focus was in the wrong place. We didn't quite have that missing piece that we needed. So everyone's been Joe or Josephine. So that's who Joe was. Okay. Pindar was the guy who, and we modeled him loosely off a gentleman by the name of Bob Proctor, who speaks on and writes on abundance and prosperity. And he's from Toronto, and he has that kind of magnificent kind of aura right about him, and he's very wise and very generous with his time and his wisdom. So that's who we modeled Pindar off of. The other characters were kind of, for lack of a better word, I guess amalgams or compendiums of several people, right? And many of the incidents in the book actually took place in the co-authors' lives. We just put them into the story as happening with the characters. So so it was really fun, coming up with them and kind of getting to know the characters as we were writing them.
So it's so inspiring for sure. I love those characters. And I was always, while reading your book, Bob, wondering, where is your piece of story, your personal story in this? Could you tell me more about, you have such an amazing track record. You've been doing this for 30 years. How did your career start, and what led you to go into this journey of 30 years to help people be go-givers?
Well, I'd say my Joe story, kind of when I was a Joe, it came when this is 40 years ago or so. I had just started in sales after beginning as a broadcaster, first in radio and then television news. I was with a very, very small ABC affiliate in the Midwest, and I wasn't really very good at it. And in a short period of time, I like to say I graduated into sales. And I had no formal knowledge of sales though, and the company where I started as a salesperson, the training was, we'll say, negligible. And when I say negligible, I mean non-existent. So it was really, I was out there on my own, and I knew nothing about it. I had as the great Jim Rohn, the business philosopher Jim Rohn used to say, I had the motivation, but not the information. I was willing to work at it and work hard, but I didn't know what I was doing. So, so as he says, you need both. You need the motivation and you need the information. One without the other is just not going to get you very far. And so one day, after several months of floundering, I was in a bookstore and I found the sales section. Now that doesn't sound like any big deal, but back then it was, because you didn't really hear a lot about sales training, and there weren't a whole lot of books on selling at the time, and so it was very encouraging to me to know that there were books written on it, that there was a methodology. And the two books I picked up, one was by Tom Hopkins and one was by Zig Ziglar, who were two of the the biggest of the day and true legends, of course. And I started studying it, and I'd go home after work at night and into the wee hours of the morning. I'd read, I'd highlight, I'd underline, I'd dog ear the pages, I'd practice, I would just go through the whole thing. And within a few weeks, my sales began to go through the roof. And, you think about it, there wasn't a whole lot of difference in me from 3 weeks earlier than 3 weeks later, other than now I had the information, I had the methodology, I had a system, right? That process of predictably achieving. So I started to really get into sales, and I loved it. And then I began, personal development, reading the books such as Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People and Think and Grow Rich, and As a Man Thinketh, Psycho-Cybernetics, The Magic of Big, and all the great classics of sales and personal development and motivation and all those great. Loved it. Now, I'd been in sales a couple of years and was doing pretty well, but like Joe, I hadn't quite gotten, I was not in any way realizing my potential. And it's really because there was a problem. And that problem was me. But I didn't realize it. Until one day I came back from a sales appointment where the sale did not occur because of my own ineptitude and or ineptness. And I came back and I was in the sales room, and I must have had a disgusted look on my face, self-disgust. And there was a gentleman who walked by. He was an older guy. He wasn't even in the sales department. I think he was in the engineering department. And I think he retired soon after. I didn't know him very well. He was one of these guys, didn't say a lot, but whenever he did say something, it was generally very profound. So when he said to me, Burg, he was a last name kind of guy. When he said, Burg, can I give you some advice? I said, absolutely, please do. I could use it. And he said, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, he said, you'll get a reward. And that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, he said, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It isn't the target itself. Your target is serving others. And that's when it hit me, that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Great salesmanship is never about the product or the service, as important as those are. Great salesmanship is all about the other person. It's all about the lives you choose to touch through your product or service. It's about how that other person will gain, will increase, will have more happiness or what have you as a result of your product or service and what you also bring along to the table.
This is so powerful. And I highly encourage you, Nomad Nation, to read the book, because in the book, Bob gives you the 5 laws of success and the 5 big tips for you to be able to be a go-giver. And also, once you hit your target of serving others, start getting your money and growing your business. One of the things that I know about my audience is that I don't think there's a lot of convincing to do about giving. My community is a big giver because of their type of lifestyle. But sometimes it's the opposite issue that they have, is like, when do you stop giving and when do you start saying no, so that you can as well focus on yourself and your own priorities? So any insights that you have there to help the go-givers who are giving, but sometimes need to set some limits for those who might want to take advantage or not even try to take advantage, just to guide their lives with being effective with it?
Well, first of all, it's very, very important to understand that there is nothing about being a go-giver that is congruent with allowing yourself to be taken advantage of, or being anybody's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way. Absolutely not. Okay. Being a go-giver simply means you understand that focusing on bringing immense value to others is the right way and most profitable way to do business. Nothing about that says you should allow yourself to be taken advantage of. The fact is, you're going to have to say no to people a lot more than you say yes, because the more successful you become, the more people are going to ask you to do things, oftentimes with good intent. And yet it's not something that is the highest and best use of your time. So you've got to say no. The big thing is, the way a go-giver says no is in such a way that you respect and honor the other person while also honoring your boundaries. So let's say, for example, somebody asks you to serve on a committee, okay, that you just, for whatever reason, don't want to serve on.
Or volunteer, for example. That's a thing that my audience has a lot of the times, volunteering.
Sure. So they ask you to volunteer for this project. Okay. And so, I've heard people say, well, no is a complete answer. It's a complete sentence. No, I disagree with that. I think that's kind of rude. And in the real world, I know how they mean it. They mean don't feel guilty about saying no, and that I agree with. But no is not a complete sentence. It doesn't respect the other person, and it's going to turn that person off, and they'll never ask you to do anything else. And you may want to keep that door open. Plus, just saying no like that is not congruent with your values of showing respect and kindness to others. So I don't agree with that. There's also people who say, well, you can say no by saying I would, but I'm too busy. Well, aside from the fact that you kind of know it's not that you're too busy, it's that you don't value doing this volunteering thing as much as you value not doing it. Okay. And so if you just say I'm too busy, what happens is the person may say, oh, okay, well, I'll call you back in 3 months and see how busy you are then. Well, now you're stuck. You're going to have to go through this. Or they persuasively show you where it's not going to take up a lot of time. Now you're in a difficult situation. You either have to admit that you just don't want to do it, which means, you've been basically caught in a fib, or in order to save face, you've got to now do it, which you don't want to do. And I don't suggest doing that either. So here's a very simple method you can use. Just practice it a couple of times so that it becomes natural, and it will absolutely set you free for the rest of your life, okay? In order to be able to say no when you need to. It's simply this. Again, they ask you to volunteer for this project, and you simply say, thank you so much for asking. While it's not something I'd like to do, please know how honored I am to be asked. Okay. Now, you may have your own style and say it a little differently. It might be, oh, thank you. While it's not something I'd like to take on, please know how grateful I am that you'd even think of asking me. Boom. And when you do that, now if they come back and say, oh, but come on, we really need, just sort of, don't argue, don't interrupt, just have a peaceful look on your face, let them finish. And then when they do, you simply say, oh, I'd rather not. But again, I do appreciate you asking. Boom. You'll retrain people that now what you didn't do is you didn't give them an excuse for them to hold on, right? You just kind of made it, you honored them, you thanked them, you let them know how honored you were to be asked, but you made it clear it's not something you were going to do. Now, by the way, there are those times when you do need to give a reason, but those are special times. That depends on the relationship, and there might need to be somewhere it wouldn't make sense not to. But 95% of the time with something like this, if you ever feel it's like because of the time or not, just no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Just do it the polite, nice, kind way. And now you can say no when you need to. Now, I'm not saying you should always say no. But if you feel it's something you want to do, it's congruent with your values, say yes. But when you're able to say no, it frees you up to say yes when that is the highest and best use of your time.
Oh, that is so good. That is so good. I love that. It is so important. So thank you so much, Bob, for this amazing insights. And is there any last word you want people to remember before we end this interview?
I think it's maybe just knowing and understanding that the more we can focus on others, we always say the single greatest people skill is a genuine and authentic interest in the other person.
Yeah.
And when we can focus on making people feel genuinely good about themselves, then they also tend to feel good about us, and a real win-win is created.
Amazing. And where would you like us to find you?
Best place to go is Burg, BURG.com.
Excellent. Nomad Nation, I highly recommend you to check. Bob has multiple books. Not The Go-Giver is one of his signature books, but I also recommend you to check the other one. So I will put all the links in the show notes of this episode so that you can find Bob easily. And thank you again, Bob. It's been amazing to be able to have the chance to talk to you today.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Nomad Nation, stay tuned to turn your challenges into great opportunities.